Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The fluorescent lights in the visitors' room of the California Women's Correctional Facility buzzed like a swarm of angry hornets, throwing an eerie pallor over everything. Luna Nozawa sat on the wrong side of the plexiglass, her orange jumpsuit dangling from her frame, the fabric discolored with the ghosts of cafeteria spills and restless nights. Her once lustrous black hair was twisted into a tight ponytail, with the ends ragged from nervous twisting. Across from her, separated by the barrier and a decade of poor decisions, sat a woman who could have been her reflection, if that reflection had spent the last 5 years learning the art of becoming someone else. Her name was Marisol Vega. Same height. The eyes have the same almond shape. The same sharp cheekbones that could cut glass. The only difference was Marisol's left brow scar, a souvenir from a bar brawl in Tijuana, and the fact that her smile never reached her eyes. She leaned forward, putting her palms on the glass as if she could push through and switch places right there. "Are you sure about this?" Luna mumbled, barely audible above the hum of the lights. Her fingers tapped against the counter, and her nails were bitten down to the quick. "Once we do this, there's no going back." Marisol's chuckle was low and throaty, like if she'd already lost everything and had nothing to fear. "I've been practicing being you for months, sweetheart. Your stroll. Your voice. The way you tilt your head while lying through your teeth. I've got it down to an art." She looked over her shoulder at the guard stationed outside the door, a bored man in his 40s who was more interested in his crossword problem than the two women scheming the impossible. "Besides, do you believe I want to rot in here for the next 20 years? Your sentence is my ticket out." Luna gulped hard. The plot began as a desperate fantasy, whispered through the bars of nearby cells during recreation time. Marisol was hauled in 6 months ago, charged with identity theft and fraud, ironic given what they were about to do. She recognized Luna from the press headlines, which screamed about the fashion heiress turned murderer. "You killed a man in self-defense," Marisol had remarked one night, her voice fading into the darkness. "But the world is unconcerned about that. They just want their villain." Luna chuckled bitterly, echoing off the cinderblock walls. "They seek Luna Nozawa, the Black Widow of Beverly Hills. Not the woman who is struggling for her life." This was the seed. The concept that someone else could take her face, name, and infamy while she disappeared into the shadows. Marisol had the skills. Years spent scheming her way through high society, faking documents and impersonating accents until she could pass as anyone. And Luna possessed or had access to the resources. A corrupt guard here, a bribed nurse there. The jail system was a machine, and every machine had flaws that could be exploited. The first stage had been a makeover. Marisol's scar was meticulously covered with stage makeup smuggled in by a kind orderly. Her hair was dyed to match Luna's precise color, with the roots touched up regularly. Luna, meantime, had begun to modify her own appearance in subtle ways, gaining weight from extra food, and allowing her hair to grow wild and untidy. She'd stopped using the light cosmetics she'd been given, leaving her skin pallid beneath the glaring lights. By the time the switch was ready, they were mirror images, even the mole on Luna's left collarbone, which Marisol had reproduced with a temporary tattoo. The second phase involved timing. November sweepstakes. The prison's annual health check, during which every inmate was shuttled through the infirmary for blood tests and physicals. Chaos is camouflaged as regularity. The guards were stretched thin, the nurses were overworked, and the system was based on clipboards and assumptions. Luna had seen it happen last year and remembered the rhythm. The way the transport vehicles idled outside, the way the holding cells filled and emptied like clockwork. "You'll take my place in Gen Pop," Luna whispered, her gaze shifting to the clock on the wall. 10 minutes till the next group of visitors was escorted out. "They will call you for your screening at 2:15. The nurse on duty, Ramirez, has been paid. She will identify you as Luna Nozawa and direct you to the wrong van. The true Luna Nozawa," she motioned to herself, "will be registered as Marisol Vega, transferred to county for a court hearing that does not exist." Marisol's eyes glittered with something that could have been admiration or avarice. What about the guard? Who is meant to escort me? He believes he is smuggling out a witness for the DA. Different paperwork, different destination. By the time anyone discovers the mistake, you'll be halfway to Mexico, and I'll be. Luna paused, the seriousness of the situation dawning on her. Freedom. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. Freedom entailed leaving behind everything she had ever known. Her family. Her name. The life she'd created and ruined in equal measure. You'll be whoever you want to be, Marisol concluded for her, her tone softening for the first time. That is the point, right? A clean slate. The guard cleared his throat, signifying the end of visiting hours. Luna put her hand against the glass one final time, feeling the cold sting against her palm. Don't screw this up, she pleaded, simultaneously scolding and pleading. Marisol winked. Please. I've spent my entire life messing people over. This is only the first time it's for a good cause. They were then separated, with Luna sent back to her cell block and Marisol escorted to the holding room for processing. The plot was in motion, a house of cards built on bribery and forged signatures. Luna's heart was pounding in her chest as she lay on her bunk that night, staring at the ceiling. She remembered her mother, Lee Finnegan, who had paid her only visit since the trial, her face filled with disappointment and anguish. Tears welled up in her eyes as she remembered her cousin Poppy, who had testified against her. She remembered Bill Spencer, the guy she'd loved and lost, who had believed her guilty till the end. I'm sorry, she said to the darkness, unsure who she was apologizing to. The next morning was dreary and cold, the kind of November day that made Los Angeles feel as if it were somewhere else. Luna was called to her screening at 1:47, 13 minutes early. A variation from regularity, but not enough to cause concern. She shuffled into the infirmary, her hands chained in front of her, the metal digging into her wrists. Nurse Ramirez barely looked up from her notepad as she uncuffed Luna and motioned to the exam table. Name? Ramirez inquired, even though they both knew the answer. Nozawa, Luna, she said, her voice firm despite her heart pounding in her ears. Ramirez placed a line on her chart and handed Luna a paper gown. Change into this. The doctor, a frazzled man in his 50s who smelled of antiseptic and bad coffee, will be with you shortly. He pushed and prodded, asking normal inquiries about pain, allergies, and a history of heart problems. Luna replied in monosyllables, her gaze riveted on the clock. 2:03, 2:07. Marisol was escorted in at precisely 2:15 p.m., her own cuffs glinting under the fluorescent lights. For a brief period, time appeared to stand still. The two women locked eyes across the room, matching in every manner that mattered. Marisol's lips twisted into the tiniest of smiles, revealing a secret shared among conspirators. The doctor did not notice. Ramirez did not notice. The guard stationed by the door was too preoccupied with his phone. All right, Ramirez replied, reviewing her clipboard once more. Nozawa, you're with Transport A, Vega, Transport B. Let's move. It was that simple. A name on a form, a van in the parking lot. Luna was let out first, with her cuffs reattached and her heart in her neck. She didn't dare to look back as she was loaded into the back of a white prison van and the doors slammed shut behind her. She didn't identify the driver, who was wearing a baseball cap that hid his face. He didn't say anything as he drove out of the lot, merging onto the freeway with the ease of someone who'd done it 100 times. 20 minutes later, the vehicle drove off the main road and onto a service street packed with warehouses. The driver turned off the engine and climbed into the rear, releasing Luna's handcuffs with a key that clearly wasn't standard issue. You've got 10 minutes, he stated gruffly. The clothes are in the bag. ID, cash, and a burner phone. After that, you're on your own. Luna opened the duffel bag he had indicated, her hands quivering. Jeans. A hoodie. Sneakers. A driver's license with her face but a new name, Elena Marquez. $5,000 in 20s. A phone with only one number programmed in. Who? She began, but the driver had already climbed back into the front seat. It doesn't matter, he said. Just don't look back. The vehicle drove away, leaving Luna alone in the shadows of the warehouses. She changed rapidly, her fingers fiddling with buttons and zippers. The hoodie smelled of mothballs and someone else's life. When she finished, she looked nothing like Luna Nozawa, the convicted murderer. She resembled any other woman in Los Angeles, nameless and unremarkable. She wandered till she came across a bus station, the burner phone heavy in her pocket. The phone number she was given rang twice before a familiar and unsettling voice answered. Luna? It was Sheila Carter, the lady who had caused half of Luna's problems. Welcome to the land of the free. We have a lot to talk about. Back at the prison, Marisol Vega sat in Luna's cell, tracing the fractures in the wall with her finger. The guard who had escorted her addressed her as Ms. Nozawa without hesitation. The other inmates had nodded at her in the chow line, as if she'd always been present. She'd smiled at them, trained and perfected, and felt the weight of Luna's life descend on her like a second skin. Phase 1 was completed. Now came the difficult part, convincing the world that she was Luna Nozawa, down to the last detail. The lies. The recollections. Her opponents would be watching her every step. She lay back on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Here's to November sweeps, she whispered, closing her eyes. The switch had worked. But the story was only beginning. Luna, now Elena, boarded a bus to downtown Los Angeles, her reflection in the window resembling a stranger. She imagined Marisol in her cage, bearing her name like a costume. She reflected about the life she'd left behind, the people who would cry, curse, or forget her completely. The bus lurched through traffic, transporting her to an uncertain future. She had no idea what Sheila desired or how much she would have to pay for her independence. But for the first time in years, she was making her own decisions. The wait was terrible, exhilarating. The city spread out before her, a tangle of lights and shadows. Her previous existence was unwinding, thread by thread, somewhere deep within. Meanwhile, a woman who resembled her was picking up the bits. November sweeps certainly. The bus came to a halt at Union Station, and Elena stepped out into the crowd. She did not glance back. Marisol rehearsed Luna's signature in the margins of a magazine in prison, and the loops and curves were perfect after weeks of study. She remembered the beach house in Malibu that Luna had described in whispered discussions, as well as the sound of the ocean at night. She recalled the family who had abandoned her and the lover who had deceived her. She reflected on the power that came with being Luna Nozawa, even behind bars. The guard passed by her cell while performing his rounds. Lights out in 10, Nozawa, he said. Marisol smiled into the dark. Yes, sir, she said, her voice sounding exactly like Luna's. Lights out. 3 days later, the first break in the plan surfaced. Marisol was in the yard, leaning against the chain-link fence, watching the other convicts play basketball, when a woman approached her. Tall and blonde, with the kind of beauty that comes from wealth and good genes. Poppy Nozawa, Luna's cousin. She shouldn't have been there. Visitors weren't permitted in the yard, but Poppy had a habit of breaking regulations, especially when family was around. Luna, Poppy whispered, her voice shaking with what may have been hope or terror. I heard about the transfer mix-up. They claimed you were gone, but then... Marisol turned slowly, her heart racing. She'd examined Poppy's face in images and remembered how her eyes crinkled when she smiled. But this was different. This was real. Poppy, she murmured, her voice cracking just slightly. What are you doing here? I had to see for myself. Poppy reached out, hovering her hand near Marisol's face, as if she could feel the truth through the air between them. They said you had escaped, that you had exchanged places with someone. But that is impossible, right? You'd never. Marisol took Poppy's hand and gently squeezed it. I'm right here, she replied. See? Flesh and blood. The transfer was an error. Paperwork mistake. I am still. Poppy examined her face for a falsehood. Marisol held her stare as tears welled up in her eyes, true tears of terror and adrenaline. She recalled what Luna had told her about Poppy, the treachery during the trial, the way she cried when the verdict was delivered. Their love was difficult, laced with hatred and shame. "I'm so sorry," Marisol said softly, mirroring Luna's pain. "For everything. For what I've put you through." Poppy's resolve weakened. She drew Marisol into an embrace, the chain-link fence pressing against their sides. "I forgive you," she replied. "We will get you out of here. This time, everything are done correctly." "I promise," Marisol said, closing her eyes and inhaling the aroma of Poppy's exquisite floral perfume. She was thinking about Phase 2. The family. Elena sat in a dirty motel room off Figueroa, clutching her burner phone. Sheila's voice had been calm, almost kind, as she issued directions. "There is a meeting tomorrow night. A warehouse in San Pedro. Come alone." Elena consented since she had no option. Sheila had all the cards, money, connections, and knowledge of what Luna had done and why. But as she glanced at the crumbling wallpaper, doubt set in. Was this liberation, or just another type of prison? She turned on the television and flipped through the channels until she found a local news station. The anchor's voice rang around the room, bright and breathless. Breaking news from the California Women's Correctional Facility. Luna Nozawa, a convicted murderer who was earlier reported as having escaped, has been apprehended. Authorities are calling the initial report a clerical error, but insiders think the mix-up could have been intentional. Elena's breath caught. They had discovered out. Not the entire truth, but enough. She grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. Nozawa's cousin, Poppy Nozawa, came to the facility today and confirmed her identity. However, doubts linger regarding a possible imposter. The film shifted to Poppy exiting the prison, her face pallid and resolute. Elena's stomach twisted. Marisol was good, but how long could she maintain the act? What occurred when the house of cards finally collapsed? She considered ringing the number again, demanding answers from Sheila. But something stopped her. Perhaps it was instinct. Or fear. Instead, she opened the duffel bag and counted the cash again. $5,000. If she was clever, she might easily disappear. The motel room felt smaller as the walls closed in. She needed air. I needed to think. She grabbed the hoodie and went out into the darkness, the city's pulse pounding around her. Marisol lay awake in her prison cell, rehearsing Poppy's visit in her head. The hug had been genuine. The weeping had been sincere. But the threat was genuine. She'd seen how the guards looked at her now, with distrust in their eyes. The paperwork would not last forever. Someone would discover the disparities. Blood type mismatch. Fingerprint records. She needed an exit strategy. And fast. The next morning, during breakfast, she approached a woman called Carla in the chow line. Carla was serving time for forgery, and she owed Marisol a favor from a prior scam they had run in county jail. "I need new papers," Marisol said, her voice low. "Something that will get me out on parole. Early release." Carla raised an eyebrow as she spooned porridge into her lips. "You are Luna Nozawa. You killed someone. They're not letting you out early for a hangnail." Marisol leaned forward. "I am not Luna Nozawa. Not really. And if you support me, I promise to make it worthwhile. There is money on the outside." Carla's eyes furrowed as she calculated. "How much are we talking?" "Enough to pay for a new life when you get out. But I needed it yesterday." Carla nodded slowly. "Give me 2 days. I will need access to the warden's office. And a diversion." Marisol smirked, her expression keen and predatory. "Distractions are my specialty." That night, Elena met Sheila at the San Pedro warehouse. The structure had been abandoned, its windows boarded up, and the air was thick with the rust and salt scent of the adjacent docks. Sheila stood in the middle of the empty space, illuminated by a single hanging lamp. She hadn't aged a day, her red hair pushed back and her eyes flashing with the same frenetic fire that had propelled her to fame in Los Angeles. "Luna," Sheila purred, spreading her arms. Or should I say Elena? Elena remained near the door, her hand in her pocket clutching a can of pepper spray she'd purchased at a petrol station. "Sheila, what do you want?" Direct, to the point. "I've always enjoyed it about you." Sheila moved slowly, her heels clicking against the concrete. I want what I have always desired. Chaos. Revenge. And you, my love, are going to help me acquire it. Elena's blood turned cold. I am done with that life. I just want to disappear, Sheila laughed, her voice echoing off the walls. Oh, sweetheart. You don't get to disappear. Not when you owe me. Remember Qatar? Do you remember what I did for you? Elena remembered. The passport was forged. A private jet. The evasion of a murder accusation that should have stayed. Sheila had saved her before, and now the bill was due. What do you want? She inquired again, her voice firm despite the anxiety gnawing at her throat. Simple, Sheila remarked, pausing in front of her. I want Bill Spencer. I want him broken. Elena glared at her, the name hitting her like a punch in the gut. Bill. The man she had loved. He had repeatedly picked Katie above her. The man whose son she was accused of murdering. No, she replied. I won't. Sheila's smile was unwavering. You will. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows where Luna Nozawa is hiding. And I'll make sure Marisol pays for your freedom. Elena's knees buckled slowly. She imagined Marisol in that jail, wearing her face and name. She reflected on the life she had given up everything to leave. What do I need to do? She whispered. Sheila grinned triumphantly. That's my girl. In the prison, the distraction arrived at 2:17 a.m. A brawl broke out in cell block C between two inmates with a grudge and improvised shanks made from toothbrushes. Guards raced in to break it up, temporarily leaving the administrative offices unattended. Carla sneaked in with a stolen keycard, her fingers speeding across the computer keyboard. She fabricated signatures, manipulated records, and created a non-existent medical emergency. Luna Nozawa has a terminal disease, and her compassionate release is pending.